Last month, I asked AI to help me explain the concepts I was working on for my research. It took the AI about 8 seconds. The explanation was clear, well structured, probably better organized than what I would have written myself. I copied it into my notes and then I moved on. 2 weeks later, I was in a meeting and someone asked me about the exact concepts, and I stumbled. I couldn't reconstruct the explanation. I remembered that I had it in my notes somewhere, but I didn't really understand it. Hi, I'm V. Welcome to the Becoming Learners, the channel about the science and experience of learning. Today's question is one I've been sitting for a while, and I want to think through it out loud with you. When we ask AI to process information for us, to summarize, to explain, to organize, to write, is the AI learning instead of us? And if the answer is even partially yes, what exactly are we losing when that happens? I want to be clear, this is not a video about whether AI is good or bad. It's not about cheating or not cheating. Those are real conversations, but they're not this one. This is a video about what happens inside the brain during the act of learning and what AI might be quietly changing about the process in ways we haven't fully noticed yet. The generation effect. Why struggle matters more than we think. Let me start with a finding from cognitive science that I find generally surprising every time I explain it. In the 1970s and 1980s, researchers discovered something called the generation effect. Here's what it means. If you read a word that's given to you, say the word code, you would remember it reasonably well. But if you have to generate the word yourself, if you are shown heart, and you have to fill in the opposite, you will remember it significantly better, even though, or rather because it requires effort. The acts of generating information, the effort, the reaching, the not quite knowing, is not a bug in the learning process. It's a feature. It's what makes the learning stick. This is what researchers like Robert Bjork at UCLA called desirable difficulties. Certain kinds of struggle, the right kinds, actually produce deeper, more durable learning than easier paths do. Now here's where this gets uncomfortable. When I asked AI to write that explanation I mentioned at the start, the AI did all the generating. It retrieved the relevant information, structured the argument, chose the words. Every single cognitive step that would have encoded that knowledge into my memory, the AI did it instead. The process was efficient, but the learning was hollow. Retrieval practice and why the past matters. That's a related concept that memory researchers take very seriously. Retrieval practice. The idea is this. Memory is not like a filing cabinet where you put something in and take it back out. Memory is reconstructive. Every time you try to recall something, every time you make the effort to pull it back from storage, you're actually strengthening the neuron pathway that leads to it. The act of remembering is itself a form of learning. Psychologist Henry Roediger and his colleagues found that students who were tested repeatedly on material, even before they felt ready, retained far more over time than students who spent the same time rereading. The struggle to retrieve, even when imperfect, builds the memory. Reading passively does not. So what happens when we outsource that retrieval to AI? When instead of trying to remember how a concept works, we just ask ChatGPT to reconstruct it for us. The information appears on the screen, accurate, organized, immediate, but the retrieval practice never happened. The pathway that would have made that knowledge yours, it wasn't built. The extended mind, a more complicated picture. Now, I want to make this more interesting because there's a counter-argument that philosophers and cognitive psychologists have been making for decades. One that's certainly very relevant. In 1998, Andy Clark and David Chalmers published a paper called The Extended Mind. The argument was provocative. The mind doesn't stop at the skin. When we use tools to think with, a notebook, a calculator, eventually a smartphone, those tools become parts of our cognitive system. They extend us. By this view, using AI is no different in principles from using a pen. The pen doesn't write for you, but it does extend your memory, your ability to organize thoughts. Is AI just a more powerful pen? Here's where I want to push back, gently but honestly. There's a difference between a tool that extends your thinking and a tool that replaces the process of thinking. A pen helps you hold onto thoughts you already had. A calculator handles arithmetic so your mind can focus on problem. But when AI summarizes an article for you or generates the explanation you were supposed to work out, it's not extending your cognition. It's substituting for the very process that would have developed it. There's a difference between offloading storage and offloading the struggle. I want to bring this into my actual classroom because I think there's something specific happening in Vietnamese education that's worth naming. I teach English at a high school. Last year, I started noticing a pattern. Students were submitting writing assignments that were unusually fluent, well-structured, vocabulary beyond the level, minimal grammatical errors. But when I asked them to explain ideas orally, even in Vietnamese, even in a low-stakes conversation, they couldn't. The concepts in their written work were essentially inaccessible to them. Now, the obvious framing is they cheated. They used AI. But I want to offer a different lens. What those students were doing, consciously or not, was optimizing for the output, not for the learning. And I don't think they fully understood those were two different things. And I understand why. In a high-stakes testing culture, and Vietnamese education is very much that, the question a student is asking is, how do I get this done? Not always, how do I actually understand this? AI is the perfect answer to the first question. It's a problem for the second one. What's interesting to me, and this is where learning science becomes relevant, is that the issue isn't just about final grade. It's about what gets built in the brain during the process of working something out. That process, with all its friction and frustration, is the learning. And when we skip it, we skip the learning, even if the output looks fine. I want to pause to be fair to AI because I think the picture is generally complicated. There are ways that AI clearly supports learning in ways that wasn't possible before. For students who are afraid of making mistakes, which in Vietnam especially is a very real effective barrier, having a patient, non-judgmental interlocutor to practice with is valuable. The effective filter, as Stephen Krashen described it, in language acquisition traps. Students try more, they experiment. AI can scaffold. It can provide word examples, generate practice questions, give immediate feedback. These are generally useful cognitive support structures, as long as the student remains the one who do the thinking. The distinction I keep coming back to is this. AI as scaffold. AI supports the learner's effort. The struggle still happens. The retrieval still happens. the generation effect still fires. AI is the training wheels, not the cyclist. AI as a replacement. AI performs the cognitive process instead of the learner. The output exists, the learning doesn't. The same tool can be both of those things, depending on how it's used. It's what makes this a question about learning design, not just a question about the technology. So where does this leave us? I want to be honest. I don't have a clear conclusion here, and I'm suspicious of anyone who does. The research on AI and learning is still catching up to the technology. We are all navigating this in real time. What I keep returning to is this. The cognitive science is not ambiguous about effort. Desirable difficulties are called desirable for a reason. The generation effect is well documented. Retrieval practice works. AI makes many things frictionless, and friction, the right kind and the right amount, is how learning happens. That doesn't mean we should refuse to use AI. That would be both unrealistic and not particularly useful advice. But it does mean we should be thoughtful about which parts of the learning process we outsource and which parts we protect, not for moral reasons, for cognitive ones. The AI is a very good learner. It processes, retrieves, generates, explains faster and more accurately than we do. The question is whether we want to watch it learn or do the learning ourselves. This week's learning experiments. Take one concept that you are currently learning from a course, from work, from anything you're studying. Explain it twice. Version 1. Ask AI to explain it to you. Read the explanation. Take notes. Version 2. Close everything. Explain the same concepts in writing yourself. From memory, don't check your notes, let yourself stumble. After both versions, notice where the gaps are. Notice what the AI explanation had that yours didn't, and vice versa. Notice how each version felt. That's it. You don't need to draw a conclusion. The observation is the experiment. If you tried this, I'd genuinely love to know what you noticed. Leave a comment, especially if what you observe surprised you. Thank you for thinking alongside me today. I'll see you in the next one.